G-Man Boxing. Do you know what I mean? Every single live he donates. I see him on other lives donating. He's got the bag on it.
Alright people, midweek report time, and boy, loads of stuff to go over in this video, as always, just at the start of these videos, because plug it at the start and people listen. Video is sponsored by the Hit Company. Thank you so much once again for being part of the channel. Supporting the channel is much appreciated. Let's start off with this. Well, it's interesting, right? We heard originally it was a kind of heavyweight tournament. Now, Boxing King Media, who do some fantastic work, I mean, I can't big Boxing King Media up enough. They are one of the best interview channels out there. I would say, I was trying to think, right? Boxing King Media and ID Boxing, whatever order you would have them in, because I think they're the two best for me. Yeah, I do watch the odd IFL interview, but I'm not subscribed to IFL. I am subscribed to Boxing King Media. It's a fantastic channel. Now, they interviewed Amir Abdullah of Saudi Skill Challenge Entertainment, and he's confirmed they are in talks with reps of all four fighters to stage Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk and Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder on the same night, though nothing is yet concrete. He's also said that the plan is to have those fight, all of them fight on a card, but not in a sort of tournament style thing. So essentially it's not going to be Fury Usyk one semi-final and Joshua Wilder the other semi-final. It's just basically about having an almighty heavyweight show, and that really is, Eddie Hearn talked about it in an IFL interview about it costing, well, it's going to cost crazy amounts of money. And it would. I mean, you're essentially talking about two pay-per-view fights that would both do very, very good numbers happening on the same card. I mean, you could do a Fury Usyk and it would do good numbers, and you could do a Wilder versus Joshua on a separate card weeks later and it'd still do good numbers. Would you, well, we're going to say, would you make more money doing two separate, or could you potentially make more money doing it all as one? It's really crazy. I mean, like, if you talk about cards, if you're talking about Usyk Fury undisputed and Joshua versus Wilder as the co-main, I mean, if they charge, like, say 35 quid in the UK, would you really complain for that level of quality, undisputed, and Joshua Wilder on the other card? Would you really complain? Would you really turn around and say, that's not worth my money? Those two fights alone, seriously. Now, nothing concrete, as he stated. Eddie Hearn actually in his recent IFL interview was talking about it, and look, he was talking about that, like, there's been talks and stuff like that going on. He said that with Joshua, they would ideally have liked to have got him out there in July. They would have ideally liked to have done that. The only issue there is that basically, from what I interpret it, nothing concrete yet, no contract in order or anything like that, but I get the impression that that's one of the stipulations that the guys in Saudi have for whatever's happening with Joshua in December, that he has to fight in December in a big fight and not essentially take any unnecessary risks. And at the end of the day, you could turn around and say, well, Dillian Whyte's not really an unnecessary risk. At the end of the day, I'd be picking Joshua hand over fist over Dillian Whyte, but he has a bit of punching power. You just don't know. I mean, when you start planning ahead in boxing, especially in the heavyweight division, that's when things can take a turn for the worst. The heavyweight division is just, I mean, it just speaks for itself. It's always going to be one of those divisions where you plan ahead, both guys have to get through their respective fights, whoever they may be, and something happens. And then it's pushed back. And then it's just a nightmare. So Eddie Hearn has been talking about that. He stated that they want to do it on the same night, upwards of 4 million in fighter purses. You would imagine that's 100 million each if that's the case, but I would probably say you would imagine that Usyk Fury would get the lion's share of that purse, so it wouldn't necessarily be 100 million each. They'll probably get a lot more, but imagine 100 million purse. I mean, seriously, if 100 million is your purse, Tyson Fury ain't never got to turn that down. I'm sure that's a number where it'd be like, yep. I mean, imagine that, really, 400 mil. Crazy amounts of money. So hopefully, look, if that's true and it's on the same night, mind blown, because that's just a hell of a card. I'd love to see it. I really hope that it is the case and that it's true, and I mean, Merry Christmas is all I'll say. That's an early Christmas present, and the rest, you know. So it'd be like, God only knows what they charge for tickets. I mean, that would be a crazy amount of money. But I hope that that's true. I hope there's some truth to it. I hope it means that we can get Undisputed over the line, because I want to see Undisputed. You know, I go back to that. That's the fight I really want. You know, the fights I want to see, the 3 fights I really want to see the most in boxing, would all be Undisputed fights. You know, Spence Crawford, and there is the rumor that that fight's going to be announced this weekend. Oh, and by the way, obviously, live watch along. I don't like doing them for the US fights, I do, but I always find them tricky to time it right, because sometimes I've stayed up for it and been just shot to pieces the next day. Other times you're told it's a 4 a.m. ring walk, so you think, okay, let's get a good half hour, 40 minutes in. So we go and we start at 3:30, and they're ring walking at 5 a.m. So I always like to know definitively, like, yes, this will be the right time. I'm probably going to do a 4 a.m. start. But I'm going to do a 4 a.m. start on the watch along for Ryan versus Tank. Probably going to do 4 a.m. just to kind of play it by ear, because how many times have we heard ring walks at 4 a.m. and it's 5 a.m. when they're, and there's literally, like, and they're saying UK time, so it's not like they're turning around and saying, you know, oh, this time in, you know, France or Spain or somewhere it's an hour ahead. No, they're saying UK time, so we'll be careful with that. But obviously, Spence Crawford, Fury Usyk, and Beterbiev Bivol. Beterbiev Bivol is kind of like, I really want to see that fight, but we're not hearing good news about it, you know. Beterbiev versus Bivol talks. This was reported by Dan Raphael, the picture of health that he is. Talks have failed, so Bivol may have to wait until September for his next fight, potentially Canelo Alvarez rematch. Bivol's manager, Vladimir Korniayev, said money wasn't serious enough to make the fight. And you know, that fight right there, the longer you leave it, the more it favours Bivol. And look, I like Bivol, I do, but I want to see these guys fight when both are at their best or close to it. Beterbiev, realistically, he's got about a year. I reckon a year before we really start to see a big decline. So I really, really, really hope we get to see that fight. I really, truly do. When they're at their best. You know, I'd hate to get the fight announced and say it happens. Say it happens like July 2024. And by then, you know, Beterbiev, the injuries have caught up with him, the time has caught up with him, and the weight's caught up with him, and we just see a shell of himself. And you just look at that and you think, look, credit to Bivol, you know, he's undisputed. But that wasn't the Beterbiev who was the Beterbiev, who was tearing through the likes of Joe Smith Jr., who was running through guys. You know, that is the Beterbiev you want to see in there. You know, so hopefully they can salvage that fight. You know, Canelo versus Bivol, or Beterbiev versus Bivol. Give me Beterbiev versus Bivol every single day. I've seen Canelo versus Bivol. I'm pretty sure Bivol's going to win again, regardless what weight it's at. You know, whereas Beterbiev versus Bivol, I don't really know. You know, I would. Now, personally, for me, the Bivol who fought Ramirez versus the Beterbiev who fought Yard, I would favour Bivol slightly. I would, but I'm not saying that with any great degree of confidence, if you get me. So I really hope we get to see that fight. In terms of big fights that we have up and coming this weekend, I obviously mentioned the fact that we're doing a live watch along for Ryan Garcia versus Tank Davis. I'm going to try and get the prediction out before Friday. Maybe this evening, maybe tomorrow. We'll wait and see. Just time-wise, I've had a lot of stuff going on. In terms of the undercard, I forgot until I watched Jamie's video on this, and it slipped my mind completely, because I did actually remember seeing this fight on the undercard a couple of weeks ago, and it was only Jamie's video came up on my sub feed. I was like, oh yeah, Beterbiev, Bektemir Melikuziev is rematching Gabe Rosado. Now, if anyone remembers, these two, well, Gabe Rosado is the only person to defeat Beterbiev. That was back in 2021. What was that on the undercard of? Who was that on a High Munguia undercard? Yeah, it was Sarameta. I remember this. I think they had this. I think they did that. Actually, they did do it. That card was, June 2021. And they did that fight UK time. So it was on at the Zone show. But they done it and they haven't done that in a while, the Zone. I missed that. I used to like that because they used to do certain fights. They do them UK time. So they do them early in the day in the US, but they'd be on about 11 o'clock at night over here, which was great. And that was one of those fights. And I remember that fight was just like, I remember Beck the Bully going into that fight, right? He'd been out, no, he actually fought, in February. But he was meant to fight Sergei Kovalev, in January 21. And that fight got pulled because Kovalev, apparently he had elevated levels of testosterone, is actually what I believe it was. So that fight got pulled, and that was part of a deal Kovalev had with Golden Boy after the Canelo fight. He had, I think, a 2-fight deal with Golden Boy, and that was voided by that. He claims it was because they didn't want him to make any money. Wait and see, who knows. But they announced this fight, and I kind of thought, Beck the Bully, I mean, he's a 168-pounder, and he was actually going to fight Kovalev at a catch weight. I think it was 176 or 77. It was going to be a light heavy, well, cruiser, if you think about it. But I remember that, and I was like, really? Rosado at this point? Well, I mean, Beck the Bully was beating the living crap out of Gabe Rosado. I mean, he had Rosado down in the first round. He was on the verge of stopping Rosado, and somehow, amazingly, Rosado pulled a big right hand when he was in the corner. And it damn near, in many ways, that was the knockout of the year. I think I actually had that as my knockout of the year in 2021. Because it was so against the run of play. Such a big shot. I remember just jumping like, whoa, what the hell was that? I remember watching like, what the hell was that? Just seeing him flat, face first. I was just like, wow, that just didn't expect it. Just against the run of play. Rosado since then has, he's not won a fight since then. He's had a loss to Munguia, to Mosley Jr., to Akhmadayev. When you're losing to the likes of Mosley Jr., I mean, I think that pretty much sums up where you're at. So I'd be favouring Beck the Bully in this fight. But you never know, because you're going back in there with the guy who knocked you out badly, really, found that right hand. But I think at this stage now in Rosado's career, I think it's time to sail off into the sunset. I really do. It's really sad that that's probably Rosado's best win. Realistically, Beck the Bully, it probably is, because he lost to Danny Jacobs, although many people felt he won the fight. He's lost to Munguia, lost to Mosley. Well, Mosley wouldn't have been a great win anyway. Lost to Martin Murray. I don't know if you felt he should have won that. Lost to Willie Monroe Jr., lost to Lemieux, lost to Jamel Charlo, lost to Golovkin in the 7th round. Remember that fight very, very, very well. I mean, Rosado's face was just a mass of blood. Golovkin had white gloves on that night, so of course that they weren't white come the end of it. Danny Morrell, who a lot of people want to see in there with Dave Benavidez, I would be keeping Benavidez away from him personally, because he's dangerous. Very good fighter. Elijah Garcia versus Kevin Salgado. It's going to be interesting. Elijah Garcia is only 19 years old. So, you look at the undercards, there's a few fights that do perk your interest. They do. Definitely, obviously, Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia. I cannot wait for that fight. The back and forth have been, interesting. I can't wait for this fight. Can't wait. Cannot wait. Ryan Garcia, Tank Davis. I'm looking forward to it, lads. I'm not going to lie. I'm looking forward to it. I can't say much more about it. I really am looking forward to the Garcia versus Tank Davis. Let's look at some of the rumours and some of the roundups that have been going on in the world of boxing as well. Edward Hearn, said on an IFL interview when he was asked about Anthony Joshua failing a drugs test, he said, "It's frightening that random accounts can post some absolute something, and before you know it, it's getting called from journos like, are you effing serious? Are you absolute total something?" This to me was just like, where is this coming from? Would I rule it out? No. You never know, really, especially with Ukad, they tend not to say things. But with this, it was like, he's not fighting till December. And obviously, the fight with Jermaine Franklin went ahead. If you fail after a fight, you are a monumental idiot, because most fighters who are on the old juice, they don't tend to be doing it during camp, certainly not fight week, because they know they're going to be tested after, and they'll definitely fail. So for me, it was like, where is this accusation coming from? Like, really, I was just like, where is this coming from? I don't buy it. Do I think that he could be? I mean, it's possible, but do I think he's failed it? No. I doubt it. I doubt it very much at the end of the day. Like, Eddie Hearn was saying he was going to fight in Saudi Arabia late on in the year anyway. They were trying to get him a big fight there, so it's not like this is anything new. He's explained that they would like to have him out in July. Joshua wanted to get out in July. He preferred himself, Eddie Hearn, to get him out in July, but obviously for reasons, obviously with fights and stuff like that, with the fight in December against possibly Deontay Wilder, with the way the Saudis are being involved, they don't want to take the risk, as I said at the start, which makes more sense. You know, Joshua even said in his post, look, it's not ideal, but part of a bigger picture. So for me, it's a pretty much, you know, in terms of, look, could Joshua be on something? That's possible. I certainly wouldn't rule it out, but in terms of him failing tests and stuff like that, I doubt it. I doubt it very much. You know, when he passed the VADA test, for what it's worth. Adam Azim will face Armand Fanya in a super lightweight clash at the York Hall on June the 10th. Vidal Riley will rematch Anis Taja. Was that the guy he fought in his last fight? And Fraser Clark will be on the undercard. Let's have a look-see and see what that card's shaping up like. So Adam Azim's an interesting one. He is. He looks very fast. Adam Azim is a very interesting one. So this guy, who was he lost to? He's only got one L. He's Ukrainian. Who did he take the L against? Renel Talgon Goran, who's lost twice. He was a Mexican. Okay. Let's see who else will be on the card. Vidal Riley, didn't he only literally just... Yeah, he only just fought that. He was going to beat that guy anyway, so I don't know why he's rematching him. Like, again, like, I have to just... Like, the matchmaking from Boxer, I just don't get it. Like, Vidal Riley beat this guy clean, handily. Yeah, he didn't knock him out flat out, but he was beating the crap out of him anyway. I don't understand why he's rematching him. As far as I am aware, was it a facial injury or something like that? Fight stopped over the left eye and the ringside doctor. But it's not, yeah, like, it was an injury, it was a facial injury, like, a bit like Joe Joyce. So it's not like he was, you know, given as good as he got in this fight. It wasn't anything like that. So why on earth they're rematching is beyond me. Again, I question the Boxer matchmaking. Obviously Fraser Clark is there as well. I do wonder, are the people who are behind the scenes of Boxer, are they familiar with matchmaking and stuff like that? Because it seems to me like they're either recycling guys who, like Fraser Clark, or not Fraser Clark, but Vidal just fought this guy, he beat him fairly convincingly, so why is he rematching him? And you get Fraser Clark, who, you know, I don't really see a massive ceiling with him, but they're putting him in there with absolute cream puffs. You know, are the matchmakers from Boxer literally looking at, okay, this guy's got an undefeated record, let's put him in there? It's like, yeah, but he's got an undefeated record for a reason. You know, there's look at who's there on that resume. There's literally nobody. There's nobody. You know, you could have a very, very basic heavyweight who's not going to trouble anyone at domestic level or English level, and if they're fighting absolute nobodies over in Hungary, well, they're going to be undefeated with a lot of knockouts as well. So I'd love to see how the matchmaking at Boxer is going, because I'm scratching my head with a lot of the matchmaking. Either like, well, a lot of it I just don't understand it, because I'm just like, why are you rematching someone who you beat handily? You know, it's not like it was a close competitive fight or anything like that. It's like he was injured, as in an arm injury or something like that, in a fight he was competitive in. No. So why are you rematching him? And then, why is Fraser Clark being matched with such cream puffs? You know? Answers on a postcard. So, the Conor Benn situation. He's reportedly been provisionally suspended. I talked about this in the video today. Effective from March 15th as part of their ongoing investigation into the positive drug test. This could throw his comeback fight June the 3rd in doubt. Now, Eddie Hearn also responded and said that Conor Benn has now shared the 270-page report with Ukad. It was initially used as the defence for the WBC into his positive drug test. Hearn said he's unaware that Benn has been provisionally suspended. So, provisional is the word there. So that basically means that they're not flat out turning around and saying you're banned indefinitely for 2 years. If it was an indefinite suspension, it's 2 years, and well, they opened themselves up to a lot of probably issues as well with that if they just did it without doing their due diligence. But with this, it's a case of, okay, provisionally you're suspended. If we like basically the dossier, if we tick all the I's, or dot all the I's and tick the T's and give you a clean, there you go, then done, gone, see ya. So let's wait and see. This Conor Benn situation it's an interesting one. It's an interesting one, you know. We've done it to death on here. We've talked about it at great length several times. It's a strange one for me. It's a strange one for me because it's just like, if this clears your innocence, why have you waited till now to go ahead with it, you know. And Piers Morgan again, like, was like, why, if this definitely proves your innocence, why aren't you showing it? Even Nigel was like, I'd like him to go ahead with the British Boxing Board with this, but let's wait and see what they say. Let's wait and see what they say. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how this unfolds. Apparently, Luis Alberto Lopez versus Mick Conlan. Maybe they watch my videos. Maybe Mick Conlan does watch my videos. Maybe he does like me after all. I doubt it very much, but you never know. Because I said that for his fight, they should do that early. I think I said it on Review of the Week. And I was like, they really need to do that fight early because it's going up against Lawrence Cody, Chris Billum-Smith. I think that fight will be better. It will be better than the Cody's last fights. And of course, Lara versus Wood too. It's going to get absolutely demolished in terms of viewing figures. It's going up against fights that are much better than Lawrence, that are better than Mick Conlan versus Alberto Lopez. So it made more sense for me to do an earlier start time, you know, so it's not clashing. And apparently that's what they're looking to do. I mean, it just makes the most sense. Look, what would make the most sense would be if promoters would just stop overlapping the goddamn shows. But that's just, for whatever reason, not going to happen. So you have to compromise, I guess, and I guess they're going to compromise by doing it slightly earlier, which at the end of the day, it means that, look, we can watch it, we get to see a world title fight, so I'm happy about that. This is why I don't like them clashing, because I'm a boxing fan. If I think that there's 3 good fights, right, 3 good main events, I'm going to want to see them all as they happen. But I don't want to see them all when they're clashing with one another, or they're on different cards, I have to go on to Sky, I have to go on to DAZN, I have to do this. It's just like, I don't want to do that. You know, I'd love to just have, right, maybe this fight is going to be on a Friday, this fight is going to be on a Saturday, and maybe this one's the following Saturday or the Sunday. You know, I love the idea of doing more shows on a Sunday. I think it's great. You know, I liked it when Eddie Hearn did it. Eddie Hearn done a couple. He's done very few, but he's done a few. I like the Sundays. I miss the old Friday fight. Eddie Hearn used to do as well the Friday fight nights briefly. Frank Warren still does them now and again. Where he will put the show, like Dylan White actually famously, Dylan White fought Ian Lewison for the British title on a Friday fight night. I think that was up in Glasgow. That was on the undercard it was on the undercard of Ricky Burns versus, is it Kerrick Relic, the guy's name, and there was a bit of a hometown cooking decision in that fight many years ago. I think it was 2016, but that was on a Friday fight night card, and that was a world title fight. I don't see why we can't have more of these happen. In terms of actual fights that DAZN are putting on, Dalton Smith will face Sam Maxwell for the British and Commonwealth titles on July the 1st in Sheffield. I'd love to go to that fight, but I'm away that day. I'm actually away in Amsterdam with my friends that day, so won't be attending that, but I wouldn't mind going to see it. Sam Maxwell versus Dalton Smith. That's going to be an interesting fight. Sam Maxwell is looking fairly over the hill at this stage, so I think Dalton Smith too young, too fresh, but Maxwell is dangerous. Jazza Dickens, oh mate, I don't like this fight. I just think this fight's just a mismatch. Apparently Jazza Dickens has accepted terms for a potential fight with Josh Warrington on June 10th in London OVO Arena. I have a bit of a love affair with the OVO Arena. I do like that stadium. I like Wembley. Wembley is nice. It's a nice part of London. It's a very nice part of London. If you ever staying in Wembley, or if you're ever going to a fight in Wembley, little bit of advice: don't book a Premier Inn in Stratford, because it's 20 odd stops on the Jubilee line. It was not fun going up there to the press conferences, that's what I will say. Stay somewhere nearer, like Westminster or somewhere like that. Don't stay in there. Stratford's nice, but don't stay there if you're travelling to Wembley, because it's not fun taking a train there. 20 odd stops on the Jubilee line. It was not fun, believe me, both days. But nice part. That fight, I don't really particularly like it, but I was interested. Josh Warrington is obviously going to fight the winner of Lara versus Wood too. So obviously and I think for a lot of times you need to have a win in your resume before they let you have a world title shot. So there you go. He's going to probably try and go in there, get a win over Jazza Dickens, who's looked fairly over the hill. I know he's with P. Taylor now. He's looked a bit better, but he's still, Jazza Dickens hasn't looked good in a long time. So I reckon Josh Warrington, I hope I wasn't saying Josh Taylor there, will have a fairly easy-ish time with him, I would imagine. In terms of the news, I think that is pretty much that. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Hope you enjoyed this video, people, as much as I've enjoyed talking about it. Smash the like button if you could. Hit subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. Thanks again, as always. I said it at the start of the video, but I gotta mention it again, because why not? They're helping me out in many ways. They have company for sponsoring this video. Lads, I'll leave it there. Peace.